Connectors. In this lecture, we're going to learn more about Pardot connectors. By setting up Pardot connectors, you can draw information about prospects gathered using activity on these third-party tools into the profile for the prospect in Pardot. Information like Google Ad clicks, ticket registration details, webinar attendance, and so on. So why should we use Pardot connectors? First of all, to save time, because after integrating Pardot with third-party tools, you won't have to spend time on switching between all apps to view data or import it manually. And secondly, to make sure your prospect profiles are complete and up-to-date in one single place. Where can we set up Pardot connectors? We can connect your Pardot with your third-party tools by going to Pardot app, clicking on Pardot settings, and selecting connectors option from the menu on the left. Here you will be able to see all the connectors that your company has already set up and enabled if you see this green mark over here. Salesforce connector. So let's start by talking about our main connector, which is Salesforce. The Salesforce Pardot connector syncs prospects, accounts, opportunities, and all the custom object data between Pardot and Salesforce. Things to know. You can have only one Salesforce connector in Pardot, meaning it is one-to-one relationship and you can't sync your Pardot data to multiple Salesforce orgs and vice versa. Pardot can integrate with Salesforce person account record types. Importing prospects into Pardot causes them to sync with Salesforce. Unassigned prospects sync to Salesforce, but records aren't created when there is no matching email address. So basically, if the record with the same email address is not found in Salesforce leads, contacts, and person accounts, this prospect will remain in Pardot until you assign it to the user or queue. Pardot checks for changes in Salesforce and Pardot every 2 minutes. As Pardot admin, you can pause the sync between Pardot and Salesforce to make configurations of data changes that could impact the data syncing. Pausing the connector temporarily is stopping the flow of data between Pardot and Salesforce, under which you resume the sync. It doesn't make any permanent changes and does not archive your Pardot business units. By clicking on the gear icon and selecting Edit Settings, you will be able to modify connector settings. Let's have a look at what we can do there. In Pardot connector settings, you can change Trusted Connector User. Now, with every Pardot org, you will receive a B2BMA user license that you should use for a connector user. You can further customize connector preferences like automatically create prospects in Pardot if they are created as a lead or contact in Salesforce, enable permission to use email addresses to match if records do not have CRM ID to match when syncing, exclude Salesforce partner and customer portal users from prospect assignment, override prospect opted out field. This is very important to enable to make sure do not email and opted out settings are the same in both systems. Stop syncing Pardot package fields. Here you can decide whether you want to sync all Pardot values like Pardot campaign, Pardot score, etc. to Salesforce. In the email logging, you can choose to sync emails with CRM and sync plugin emails with CRM. And in the email notifications, you can choose to enable Salesforce emails for task creation, enable Salesforce emails for assignment rules, and allow to send Pardot notification emails when a merge is synced down from Salesforce. We will go more deep dive into user sync in users lecture, but as of now, you should know that here you can decide whether you 100% want to manage all users in Salesforce, which Salesforce profile users you want to automatically assign to Pardot, and which Pardot role they should inherit, whether you want to update Pardot user when a user's Salesforce profile changes, whether you want to move Pardot user to a recycle bin when they no longer have an assigned profile, and if you want to skip Salesforce syncing user whose email address matches an existing Pardot-only user. In marketing data sharing, you can decide on which Salesforce standard and custom object records the connector user sees and syncs to Pardot to make it available for marketing use. For example, if I click on the arrow icon for account contact relationship object and click Edit, I can change the setting to use explicit criteria and choose which records specifically I want to sync. Maybe for a business, it makes sense to sync only active records. And finally, in the campaign settings, you can enable connected campaigns and engagement history, enable campaign member syncing, choose to use Salesforce to manage all campaigns, and all of these three, in my opinion, should be enabled, except if you have some special business requirements or security concerns. And lastly, you will need to select all campaign record types you want to sync. Also, when talking about connector, it is very important to know that on the frequent basis, we should be checking on, first, sync queue. Whenever you're going to do any major big updates to Pardot prospects, you will see here the total number of all prospects that are awaiting to be uploaded with the latest data based on your sync reason. For example, you had a field in Salesforce and at the later stage, you decided to create that new field in Pardot. You triggered the sync all prospects to make sure all values from records in Salesforce are brought to Pardot. The second thing to keep checking on a monthly basis would be sync errors. Whenever sync errors occur to your prospects, you will see a number of errors here. By clicking on the number, you will be able to see all prospects that do not sync back to Salesforce due to the error with the all errors and the descriptions. The most typical errors you will see are usually due to discrepancy in picklist field values in Salesforce and Pardot. It could be because your Salesforce admin added new values to picklists in Salesforce and salespeople started to use them, and Pardot admin did not sync these new values to Pardot. Hence, prospect from Salesforce cannot sync to Pardot because new values do not exist. Another scenario could be when your Salesforce admin makes fields required in Salesforce on the field or page layout level, and you do not collect these fields for prospects in your website forms. Due to this, even though prospect is assigned to a user or a queue, it won't be able to sync to Salesforce as it is missing now newly required value. To sum up, I would highly recommend for Salesforce and Pardot admins to work hand in hand together and sync up on all changes any of you are making in the system to avoid any errors. Now let's talk about other Pardot connectors. Webinar services. You can connect Pardot to your webinar services to register prospects for events using Pardot forms. Then score prospects based on the event attendance, report on registrants and engagement, and create prospects from registrations. Pardot integrates with WebEx, GoToWebinar, and ReadyTalk. GoToWebinar connector allows you to also track recorded webinars. Google Ads connector. Pardot connects with your Google Ads account to track prospects that reach you through paid search. You can tie cost data from Google Ads to opportunity data from Salesforce to determine true cost per qualified lead and search engine marketing ROI. Google Analytics connector. The Google Analytics connector pulls UTM parameters into Pardot, where they can then sync with Salesforce. Pardot collects data from the 5 Google Analytics tags: campaign name, medium, source, content, and term. This connector simplifies the flow of Google Analytics data between Pardot and Salesforce. Twilio connector. If you use Twilio, create a connector to instantly follow up with prospects via phone. The selected user gets a call when a prospect submits a connected form so that the user can connect with the prospect by the phone. Twilio activities appear on a prospect records, where you can view details about your calls. Bitly connector. Pardot generates Bitly short links for landing pages, multivariate tests, and files. Use your own Bitly account with the connector to track links performance from Bitly. If you use a custom domain Bitly account, Pardot uses it to shorten URLs. Olark. Use the Olark connector to create prospects from your chats and view chat activities on the prospect records. User voice connector. Pardot syncs bidirectionally with user voice, a suggestion tracking and support ticketing system. You can pull in suggestions and support tickets as prospect activities, update prospects, and view user voice data in Pardot. Add this connector. Allows you to add your company's social media links to your email and landing pages. Eventbrite. Pardot syncs with Eventbrite to provide reporting and scoring on event registrations and attendance and track prospect event activity. Wistia is a video hosting service that measures engagement with your content. Use the Wistia connector to record prospect videos, activity, and create prospects from video conversions. Social media connectors. Use Pardot social media connectors to enrich prospect data and post to Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. The key 3 limitations you'll need to be aware of are: you can add only 1 image per post. You cannot mention other accounts from within Pardot. You can do it only directly. So here, for example, you might want to use just a custom redirect to track your post. And you cannot upload the video. Again, you will be able to do it only directly. Lastly, WordPress org sites. You can integrate Pardot with WordPress org sites. The Pardot WordPress plugin lets you to add Pardot forms and dynamic content to your WordPress pages and posts without using code. If there's a platform you want to use that doesn't have a pre-made Pardot connector, it may be possible to still build one using the expert developer and the Pardot API documentation. So that's it. That's all you need to know about Pardot connectors. So happy connecting and see you in the next lecture.